United States Captain, Air Force, retired, Scott O'Grady. A big round of applause.
Wonderful to be here. Thank God we live in Texas. Texas is truly the greatest land on earth. It's where we have the most patriotic citizens in America living today. Well, I'm Scott O'Grady, and I am a former Air Force fighter pilot, and I flew combat missions over Iraq and Bosnia. And during the Bosnian War, I was shot down and spent 6 days surviving in enemy territory until my rescue. I want you to know, I know what it's like to have my freedom taken from me. But to survive, I relied upon the love of God, family, and my country. Yeah. And I am grateful to know that all of you as Texans know where our freedoms come from and how our freedoms were won, by clinging to God and to our guns.
Yeah! Like a load, baby!
I'd like to share a story with you that a good friend of mine, Congressman Ralph Hall, tells, which describes the leadership of our government in Washington, D.C. There was a West Texas cowboy out working his herd in a remote pasture when suddenly a brand new sedan pulls up in a dust cloud. The driver, a young man inside wearing a three-piece suit, silk tie, designer shoes, fancy sunglasses, rolls down his window and leans out and he asks the cowboy, "If I can tell you exactly how many cows and calves you have in your herd, will you give me a calf?" Now, before the cowboy can even answer, the yuppie parks his car, whips open his laptop computer, connects it to his cell phone, surfs the internet, downloads a GPS navigation satellite exact fixed position of his location. He then feeds that information over to a NASA satellite that comes overhead, takes a high-resolution photo of his location. He then downloads that digital picture on Adobe Photoshop, exports it over to a processing center in Hamburg, Germany, and within seconds he receives an email confirmation on his Palm Pilot that the image and the data has been received. He then opens up a database that's connected to a spreadsheet with hundreds of complex formulas. He uploads all this data via email on his BlackBerry, and in minutes he receives the final processed information. He then takes that and he uses a high-technology, miniaturized laserjet printer to print out a full-color, 150-page report, and he then turns to the cowboy and he says, "You have exactly 1,586 cows and calves." The cowboy says, "That's pretty good for a city fella. Go on ahead and pick out any animal out of my herd." And the cowboy watches in amazement as the yuppie goes in, grabs an animal, and starts to stuff it into the back of his trunk. But before he takes off, the cowboy says, "Sir, if I can tell you exactly what you do for a living, will you let me have my animal back?" And the man thinks about it for a second and says, "Okay, that's fine." The cowboy says, "You're a member of Congress." And the yuppie says, "Wow, that's correct. But how did you guess that?" "No guessing required," responded the cowboy. "You showed up here even though nobody called you. You want to get paid to an answer I already knew, to a question I didn't even ask. And you know nothing about my business. This is a herd of sheep." "Now will you open up your trunk and give me back my dog?"